What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Gaming Without Parole. Sitting across from me this week and every week, Desra.
And sitting across from me is Bryan Paul.
We're charming.
We are.
You missed the conversation while the music was playing, but it turns out we're charming.
We got that certain special something. A special purpose here.
Is there a song?
Probably.
Insert song here. Des,
Enter Sandman?
Please, and thank you. What are we going to talk about this week?
Today we're going to talk about my favorite genre of game, 3DO.
So not audio or video.
No, 3DO.
3DO.
Yeah, and apparently my Acrobat update is ready to install.
Oh, mine's been telling me that for months. Turns out I don't have Acrobat.
Oh, okay.
Long story.
So yeah, 3DO was a console. And here's where things get a little squidgy, because usually we can say, oh, this console was made by Nintendo, or this console was made by Sony. Mm-hmm. This console doesn't really have a manufacturer.
No, actually, we were talking earlier, and I pretty much decided that the 3DO is a giant scam, right? It was just a mess.
Yeah, so basically, 3DO was a set of specifications made by a guy named Trip Hawkins, and a couple other developers.
I think everybody knows Trip Hawkins. He founded Electronic Arts.
Right.
And then he was like, I got this bigger and better thing I'm going to do. I'll see you guys later. And
it can't turn into this.
Didn't turn out so well.
And so what they figured out was like, well, we can come up with the plans to build a console, but not actually have to risk any money in the, building it by just licensing out these plans to other developers.
Yeah.
We're not developers, that's the wrong word, manufacturers.
Yeah, Sanyo, Gold Star, Panasonic.
Yes,
those are the three big ones, right?
Yeah. Apparently AT&T licensed it, though, as well. They never actually, they made one production model they used at a trade show.
I mean, these things ranged from consoles that looked like VCRs to one that looks a little bit more like a, original PlayStation, to one that was actually just a board that you put in your computer like a sound card.
Yeah, that's the one I wanted to mention too. That's crazy. So it's interesting to see if the 3DO actually took off, if that would have become like one branch of console. Could imagine having like the Nintendo plugin for your desktop computer.
Right. Now, the major problem with 3DO was the
There's
price
only one?
point. Well, sort of, right? The price point was so ridiculously over the top. It launched at $699, and that was in '93.
Yeah.
Now, you and I are now famous for for talking about inflation.
Let's see, $600.
Here we go.
In 1993.
No, $700 in 1993.
$700. That's right.
Yeah, it was $699.99, and.
Watch us do our research in real time.
This is why would we have done this beforehand?
So that is $11,091.
$1,191. So it's almost a $1,200 console, which is, I mean, at the time, $700 was ludicrous. $1,200 now, even more ludicrous.
Yeah. So what's a PS3 going for right now, or PS4?
A PS4, $250.
That's crazy.
When it launched, it was only $400.
Right.
So by comparison, crazy.
Yeah, brand new, you could have bought 3.
Right.
For the price of this.
Now, the reason it was so expensive, we should probably mention this, is because what happens when Sony makes a console, or Microsoft or Nintendo, they can afford to take a little bit of a hit. Nintendo has a history of not taking a hit, but Sony and Microsoft definitely sell consoles for less than they cost to make. And the reason that is because they are going to get their money back on the sale of games.
Right.
But when you're licensing out the technology, the specs basically, Sanyo, Gold Star, and Panasonic had to make money on the console itself because that's where they were getting their money from.
Right.
What made this attractive for developers at all, which is crazy, was that the royalty that they had to pay 3DO was like $3 per game.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure was about half, maybe even less than half, of what you'd have to pay Nintendo to make a game for their console.
Right. Super cheap, and I mean, if this had worked, it would mean that many different manufacturers would be making this console. Yeah. So as a game developer, you would be able to sell your game to a lot of different manufacturers. So it's one of those, it maybe could have worked. If a few different things had been different, it might have been a success, but they weren't, and it wasn't.
Which is kind of unfortunate, because I think when we talked about the Atari Lynx recently, it's a similar story. This thing is pretty powerful, but it never actually had the chance to be for anyone to show what it could really do.
Right.
You know,
Well, and let's see. I mean, this thing had some firsts. First 32-bit console.
how was it?
Yeah, apparently that's what this claims, anyways.
We'll go with that.
And this one is actually completely legit. This was the first console that was designed, or at least promoted, to be a fully multimedia device. You should be able to play your music on this, watch movies, you know.
But not DVDs.
Not DVDs.
Way too early.
Yeah. And then, you know, put your photos on CD, throw them in there. So, you know, what consoles are now, that's pretty much, I mean, no one would really launch a console that couldn't play DVDs.
Right.
Nintendo?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Switch. Yeah, the Switch doesn't.
Doesn't even play Netflix.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Nintendo? I want to lay in bed and watch Netflix. Anyway, so usually I let you take it away with the first game. I want to take control back this episode.
Okay.
Because the first game I want to talk about...
Should I get my collar on?
The shot collar? Collar?
Okay.
Shot collar. Crash and Burn.
Crash and Burn. Oh, right.
This is by Crystal Dynamics.
Yes.
And it was a launch title.
It wasn't just a launch title.
It was the only launch title. And it got packed in the 3DO box with the 3DO system.
I can't believe we missed this on our launch title episode. This was
unbelievable. What console launches with one game, Nintendo 64? Unbelievable.
Ooh, I know.
What?
A console that isn't really sure of its launch date and tells everyone that its launch date is about 6 months later than actually it's going to be.
But how? Picture this. Let's take a walk with me, folks.
Yeah.
I've had too much coffee. So you go into a store and you're like, this is the day I've been waiting for. It's finally the day the 3DO comes out. It's the most powerful 32-bit machine ever made.
I've mowed 70 lawns.
It's amazing.
At $10 a piece. So I have $700 in my pocket, ready to go.
Man, that's like $30 by today's standpoint. That's a lot of lawns. And you walk in and you've got like $1,000 in your pocket because you're like, if I'm going to spend $700 on a console, I'm going to buy a bunch of games to go with it. And you walk in and there's the 2 consoles that the store actually got because they were totally undershipped.
Yep.
And you're like, where are the other games? And they go, that's it.
That's it.
You can, even if you wanted to spend more money for more games, you couldn't. That was it. Crash and Burn.
Yep.
No, I wasn't even talking about the game just now.
No.
So let's talk about the game. The only launch title, it was packed in, actually planned later. This is 93, but in 95 they planned for a PlayStation 1 release of it. Never happened. Nope. It's a racing game.
Okay.
It's a car combat game.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, think of like Road Rash, but with shooting cars. Yeah,
okay.
Flamethrowing cars. Pretty awesome stuff. The problem is he chose from one of 6 racers, and they call them cyberpunk racers, but man, that just makes cyberpunk sound awful. Because if you watch the full motion video of said cyberpunks, oh my god, yeah, that's the problem. It's full motion video. It's horrible voice acting. It's super stereotypical. Like everything about this just makes me like just roll my eyes. I'm like, oh god, did we ever think this was cool?
That reminds me of one game I reviewed that I'm not going to talk about because Wing Commander was the same thing.
We'll talk about that next week.
Maybe.
But Mark Hamill.
No, not this one. This is he was Wing Commander 3. This was Super Wing Commander he gave me. Yeah.
We'll talk about that eventually, maybe. Who knows? So you can
stereotypes, bad FMV.
Yeah, horrible FMV. Yep. But let's talk about the game itself.
Okay.
It wasn't true 3D.
No.
There's a problem. You can only the camera is set. You cannot accidentally turn around and go the other direction on the course. That's
why would you want to do that?
Yeah, but it's just right. It definitely feels limited when you're driving. The courses actually look pretty good. It's just like everything's textured, and for a launch title, I mean, it looked pretty damn good. Definitely the best looking racer at the time.
Okay.
I mean, to an extent. But the interesting thing about Crash and Burn is that you couldn't crash the car.
Could you burn it?
You could, because you have flamethrowers as one of your weapon. Okay. So you could totally burn other cars, but you can't crash them. It's just, you kind of like ricochet off the side of the road and it slows you down a little bit.
In their defense, Burn sounds like is a pretty awkward title to say.
Oh yeah, Crash, Burn. Burn. I hate the 90s were weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see. Oh, what I do like about this game is that sometimes if you're in first place and you're way ahead of the pack, there's just no chance anyone's going to catch you. Well, this game, you were racing against all those other cyberpunk drivers that you could have chosen from, but you're also, there's also on the course just these random cars who are like part of like the Destruction Derby, but not racing.
Okay.
So like they can come out of nowhere
And just clobber you.
and still attack you.
Okay.
So it's like it adds that extra level of challenge. Even if you're like way ahead in first place, there's definitely a third-person view and a cockpit view, which is a little bit uncommon for the time. Let's see. I feel like there's one more thing here. That might be it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. It's not a great game. Oh,
No.
It's only one player.
Oh, yeah, which actually brings me to something when we were talking about the basic system.
Yeah.
The controller.
Oh boy.
How many, and this, so we're in the age of a Super Nintendo and a bunch of other really popular consoles there. Multiplayer is a big thing, local multiplayer anyways.
Yeah.
How many controller ports would you say this awesome new groundbreaking system would have?
4?
4, sure.
You'd hope. for
4, 6, 8?
Yeah.
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 One. There is one port on the front of the machine.
The whole design concept was just a mess.
So you may be asking, well, what if I do want to play a 2-player game? Well, that's no problem. You just unplug the little patch from your controller and plug in the controller into your controller.
Right.
Daisy chaining them around.
Oh, so you're tethered to your opponent.
Yes.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Which, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have siblings, but could you imagine the chaos that would happen? Oh, yeah.
Right. Or you're winning. Boom.
I didn't even think that. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, don't give somebody else control of your cable.
Yeah.
Ever.
So, way to go.
All right. Moving on.
All right, so I
This is
want
going
to
to be
talk
the
about...
longest episode of all time.
It's
going to be 2 parts.
Yeah, it's one of those, I'll say a little behind the scenes stuff. When Bryan said, oh, we want to take a look at the 3DO, this is kind of similar to the Lynx in that I'd never played it before. It's like, okay. And he was like, I think it might be kind of one of those overlooked gems. I'm like, all right, great. I'll take a look. And I went into this with as open of a mind as I could find. And gosh, there's just not a lot here.
We're going to come at this from 2 very different perspectives, which is great because usually we have a very similar perspective on things.
Yeah.
I actually really like the 3DO, as you will see as we move on through this episode and next. But I don't think you had that good of an experience.
No, it took me straight to hell.
Let's talk about
cyberpunk
that.
thriller. So one of the games I took a look at and thought was worth mentioning was Hell, a Cyberpunk Thriller. It came out in 1994 by this young startup called Take-Two Interactive.
Huh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. It's actually, if it does sound familiar, I'm not quite sure why. They're the parent company of these little, minor developers, Rockstar and 2K Games. Ever heard of them?
DMA Design?
Yeah. So this was actually Take-Two's second game they ever released.
The first one, Body Harvest?
No, the first one...
that was N64 later.
The first one was... I can't remember now, and
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
We're not
this
about
was the second.
Facts.
Being first never succeeds. Okay. So this actually came out for the DOS, Mac, and the 3DO. Really, when Bryan handed me the stack of discs, this is the first one that caught my eye. I was like, a cyberpunk thriller, 1994. This will be great. Maybe a little cheesy, but pretty awesome. And hey, some actual celebrity talent. You get Dennis Hopper. You get Grace Jones. You get Stephanie Seymour. She was kind of a big model at the time. Jeffrey Holder, who was a James Bond villain, the whole voodoo one. Gosh, I can't remember his name, but
God only knows.
Yeah. So I was like, hey, this might actually be pretty entertaining. No.
No.
I mean, I could stop there, but let's keep going. Everything is it's basically a point and click adventure. Everything is computer animated, I guess we can call. All the characters are 3D models. I will say they did some pretty good work on Dennis Hopper. His character is Mr. Beautiful. It looks kind of like Dennis Hopper, and Grace Jones' character, Imperator Solux, looks kind of like Grace Jones. So, good on you. The storyline, really interesting kind of dystopian. It's 2095. Turns out that demons in hell are real.
We all knew that.
Yeah, sure. And the U.S. is now run by a theocracy called the Hand of God. And things like cybernetics and virtual reality are against the law. You are one of two agents, either Gideon Ashanti or Rachel Brack.
You get to choose?
You get to choose. And does it make a difference? Not particularly. There's a little bit of a thing at the very end where the plot diverges by... Hi. To all you wearing headphones, sorry about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't really matter which one you choose. Basically, hey, imagine this, a noir thriller where you're a police officer who gets set up at the very beginning, and the entire mystery is you trying to figure out who set you up and why. Never heard of that plot before. It's a point-and-click adventure, except for one thing. You don't really need to point and click. You can just drop down this menu at the top, and one of the options is examine. If you click on examine, it will show you a list of everything in the room that you can interact with, and then you can click on it and either put it in your inventory or read it or do whatever you need to.
I want one of those for real life.
Yeah, well, that would be nice.
Yeah.
And at first, I was thinking, well, this will help prevent the whole pixel hunting thing. Some of the classic adventure games, like, is that the thing I need? I don't know.
Moving your cursor around every single
exactly,
area of the
yeah,
screen
just
slowly.
like, oh wait, no. So it kind of does away with that, but also does away with the whole exploration.
Yeah, like the game.
Yeah. And it turns out you have a graphical adventure game that doesn't really need a graphical counterpart. The dialogue, there's lots and lots of dialogue in it, which would be cool. I mean, it would be if it was like, okay, maybe I just changed my headspace about it. Maybe it's just like a novel that I'm playing rather than like a game.
Yeah.
But the dialogue is very difficult to go through.
It's rough. It's a product of its time for sure.
Yeah. And the voice acting goes from really interesting to really bad.
Yeah.
I'll say like this is the most Dennis Hopperiest Dennis Hopper head that has ever been hopped. It is like, if you imagine the stereotype of someone doing a bad impression of Dennis Hopper, that's his character in this.
Wow.
And so it's beautiful. I mean, it's basically, I think they just pretty much set up a mic in front of him and said, you go. So for that's kind of interesting for his parts. Grace Jones pretty much sounds like she's in a studio reading off a sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper. She's a phenomenal performer and just like so bonkers amazing. Like if you ever see her perform like in concert, she's not even a human being. She's fantastic. But in this, yeah, kind of wasted. And going back to the dialogue stuff. So, okay, you go through all these dialogue things, you make it through. Oh wait, there was something I missed. I have to go back and listen to the whole thing again.
It's really. I mean, if you have unlimited amounts of time, you could probably find some enjoyment out of this. But they made it somewhat tedious.
Yeah,
and everything just has that old CD-ROM feel to it, where everything just kind of chugs.
Yeah,
including conversations.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say as far as for kind of interesting in the gameplay, so the point and click stuff, like I said, forget about that. But a lot of the mechanic is figuring out codes and passwords, getting hints, deciphering things. If you like that kind of wordplay, there's some interesting puzzles in this game. There's a slight problem, though. Some of the puzzles are broken. There's one individual, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but where a character says something that's supposed to be a clue. He basically says some words that you're supposed to decipher and turn into like the passwords you need for something else. Which is fine, except what he says is different from what the captions say, is different from what you'll see if you go to replay it and try to get that information again later. What he says in the audio is the correct answer. And if you translate that or you decipher that, you'll get what you need to. What you get in your notes on the system or the closed caption is incorrect. And if you decipher that, there's no way to solve the puzzle.
So back in the day, impossible to beat this game.
Yes. Yeah.
But now with the advent of the internet, we can work around it. Oh, but then you'd actually have to still play it.
Yeah. And one other fun twist, which thankfully I discovered, because I read about this before I continued playing through it, there's a timer. That basically it shows you how many days you've been playing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to spoil anything, but you have to solve the main storyline in X amount of days.
Oh.
Or you die.
They don't tell you that, though, do they?
And they don't tell you that at any point.
Damn it.
At no point does it warn you that, oh, by the way, you need to finish this. And hey, let's add one more twist to this, because screw you, gamers. Mm-hmm. There are storylines that will not click in, or I should say characters that don't appear until a certain amount of in-game time has passed. So you're literally sitting there wandering around, killing time to get the story to move, even though there's a time limit.
It's like the very first Shenmue.
Yeah. Yeah. So
you're not a fan, is what you're saying.
I'm not a fan, and here's the thing. I really like this world.
Yeah.
I really like the setting. There's a big twist, and again, I've given you kind of the hints. Demons in hell are real. There's a theocracy that can send you to hell whenever they want and pull you back. Mm-hmm. And virtual reality is a crime. Put those together, you might be able to figure out what the big twist is. It's not too obvious, but yeah, I would say if you like this kind of idea of a story, Ian M. Banks, a fantastic science fiction writer, he's got a book called Surface Detail. It's probably my least favorite of the cultural novels, but it's still infinitely better than this, as it uses the kind of the same ideas.
Just go read that.
Let's go read that instead.
Or read something better.
Yeah.
We don't care.
I think it's interesting in what it was trying to do, but it's just another example of really interesting idea, massive failure in execution.
So my next game is actually going to be right on target with the last few words you just said.
Uh-oh.
Now, the reason I love the 3DO is because they really did try some new things. They really did have some great concepts. But then the execution of them, I feel like, and you said this to me earlier today, so I'm not taking credit for it, I feel like almost every game on the system tried to do too much with the technology. Like the CD-ROM based technology was in its infancy, and it just tried to push it too far, too often, and it kind of ruined a lot of things. Like my next game, Killing Time. Or Killing Time.
Kind of like
emphasis.
What we were doing in Hell.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I remember Killing Time from when I was young. I didn't have a 3DO when I was a kid, but I did have a PlayStation 1. I remember seeing an ad in Electronic Gaming Monthly for Killing Time, and it looked awesome. It was like a narrative-based, story-driven, first-person shooter. And I was like,
ooh,
cool. And
Half-Life?
Before Half-Life. And math, years, timeline. Yeah. Anyway, so this is before a lot of games were doing that. You know, like first-person shooters at this point were like Wolfenstein and Doom and Hexen and Power Slave.
You mean awesome?
Awesome, but they very quickly got very generic because they all did the same thing. And so Killing Time tried to infuse. By the way, never came out for PlayStation 1, even though there were advertisements that said PlayStation 1. Horribly disappointed as a child.
There's the stink of vaporware, like everything to do with the 3DO.
Yeah. But it actually came out for 3DO, thank goodness. And so what this game was all about, you go into this first-person shooter style game.
Okay.
And it's very Seventh Guest in its appearance because you walk around in real time with not pre-rendered graphics, real-time graphics, and basically sprites or 2D videos of apparitions of ghosts will appear in random places around the environment. As you're walking by, you stop and go, oh, what's going on over here?
There's a ghost.
And it has this air of being like a super creepy game, right? It's called Killing Time. Right? It looks demonic. It looks crazy. It's dealing with death and murderers and all sorts of crazy stuff. But it never actually gets scary, and it really could have. It's just a little disappointing on that side of things, but it was cool that they tried to incorporate full motion video into like a Doom style first person shooter. And obviously narrative driven first person shooters have come a long way since then.
Yes.
But this is like kind of the genesis of all of that. My biggest problem with this game, besides navigating mazes and stuff. I hate mazes. Is that the controls are super sensitive. They have this weird momentum where, like, when you're turning, it's a D-pad after all, not an analog stick.
Right.
When you're turning, it starts slow and then goes fast, and then you let go of the stick or the D-pad, and it kind of keeps moving just a little bit. So, like, trying to center the screen to just the right place to shoot the dude before he shoots you, it's really difficult.
It's not just killing time. That's
wasting time.
Yeah, that's pretty typical of. I played a couple, first-person shooters type games on this, and that's pretty common.
Yeah. And the weird thing is like Wolfenstein and Doom had already nailed first-person style controls.
Yeah.
This wasn't like why did you reinvent the wheel? You already had a perfect wheel. Yeah. So slow frame rate, kind of chunky controls. The opening scenes, the opening level, you're in this weird area outside of this mansion, and your first enemies are ducks, like actual quack quack ducks. And so like you're like, oh well, I don't want to kill a duck because they've done anything to me except taste delicious.
I don't have any bread. I got no beef with them.
Right? No mustard. So then the ducks attack you, so you got to shoot the hell out of them. And then duck hunters are your next enemies, and they take forever to kill. It's the whole thing's
Wouldn't
real
they be your friends
strange.
because you killed them and they like killing them? Or unless you killed their ducks, yeah.
Yeah, like they wanted to kill the ducks,
Right,
so now
okay.
you're dead.
All right, well, that's justifiable.
Just real quick, major problem with this game. It was unbeatable in its original release.
That sounds familiar.
If you bought the game in the store and it came with a red disc, like I think all of them did, you get to a certain point in the game and everything gets real pixelated and starts glitching out, and the whole thing freezes and like crashes. And so a lot of people never even got to this point in the game. Luckily, I guess for this company. But if you got to that point in the game and you were like, the game's broken, you could send it to the publisher, the disc, and they would send you back a red disc in place of the black disc. And on the red disc was the fixed, patched version of the game. Hey, pre-internet kids, this is what we had to do. Right? Do you remember this stuff? Remember getting like 3.5-inch discs in the mail for like updates and stuff? Crazy.
Absolutely.
It's
kind of better in some ways.
Well, because you kind of forced you to release a finished product, which obviously didn't always happen.
Right.
So if you have the black disc in your collection, send it to Without Parole Games, care of Bryan Paul.
No reason.
Worcester, Massachusetts, please. It's super expensive. It's rare. Not a lot of people sent their disc in to get the replacement because they didn't make it that far in the game, and they only printed so many of them because no one complained. It was weird. I have the red disc. I've never made it even to the point where it glitches out, so whatever. I don't care. And that's killing time. Again, potential, but a lot of missing execution. I want to execute a duck.
Yeah. So I'm going to actually, before this turns into a complete hate party, I'm going to talk about a game that I actually really enjoyed playing.
Do I need to go behind the green screen and get a manual for you?
Well, I guess.
Hold on. So look at the camera. No, but don't move.
Don't move.
Okay, ready? Don't move. Don't move. Hold that pose.
Yay!
Fantastic. Slayer.
Yeah, actually, this, now that we have the case here, it does kind of bring up one of the other things I want to talk about. So you're a retailer.
Oh, God.
You've got shelf space set up for your Nintendo cases and your Sega Genesis and other jewel case for your PC games. And 3DO comes along and says, we want this on your shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went to the long box.
A little much.
Just, whatever.
But now remember, at this point, right, CDs were fairly new.
Yep.
And remember when you'd go to Lechmere?
Do you remember Lechmere?
Right, no one does.
I'm old.
Yeah. And and all the CDs would be in these long cardboard cases about this size, and they'd have because I think the deal is retailers were scared that that discs were too easy to steal. Even cassette tapes came in that big long plastic thing. Well,
it was that, and it was actually deliberately for what I said, so people would notice the long box, and it's because, this is kind of way getting off topic. The CDs couldn't fit in the space that an LP would. Okay, and so they actually wanted to use the long boxes because 2 long boxes could fit in the slot that an LP would be in.
That's a big manual.
Yeah, and actually there's... Oh, yeah, we'll get back on topic. So, yeah, we're going to talk about Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Slayer. This was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
This was a cool idea for a game. This if this had hit me when I was into gaming, or if this has come out to other consoles, because I was a D&D player at this time. And this was one of the only ones we've talked about so far that is a 3DO exclusive. This only came out through 3DO. What it is basically the dungeon crawling parts of Dungeons & Dragons without all the whole character building. Well, I mean, without all the whole storyline. It uses the AD&D second edition rules. Yeah, second edition rules. You roll a character. So when you start, you can choose from some pre-made ones, or you can roll your own, which is kind of one of the things that's a little bit broken.
I like to roll my own.
Yeah. So, if you play D&D or any kind of role-playing game, you part of it is building your character beginning. You roll, crap, I only got a 9 for charisma. Well, I guess I'm not going to be a wizard. Well, you can actually manually max out all the attributes if you want. Like, you roll your character, then you put the cursor. Let's say you only rolled a 9 for charisma. Just put your cursor over there, hit A few times, bump it up to where you want it. One of the things I loved about this is how true it is to the Dungeons & Dragons experience, though, because it has a 32-page manual.
Very impressive manual, too.
And this is not like today where, a third of it is just the same manual in French and Spanish and Japanese. This is, it's an honest-to-goodness, like Dungeons & Dragons type manual. It shows you the stats for all the monsters you're going to be meeting. It shows you all your leveling up, all the spells, descriptions of the spells, just everything you would want. Class breakdowns. A level of detail it absolutely does not need to have, because honestly, it doesn't come into play that much. You roll a character, you run around. In a lot of ways, it's just a first-person shooter, but with magic and spells and whatnot. But just this level of detail, I absolutely love. This is fantastic. So yeah, you can choose your character, class, and race with the same kind of perks and limitations. So, halflings can't wear this, clerics can't use bladed weapons, all the other good stuff. What's cool about this is it's procedurally generated in a lot of ways. Like, you roll a new dungeon every time you play. You can choose, it's totally variable. So you can do how many levels you want, how many monsters are going to be there, how available treasure is, how bad poison affects you, etc., etc. Then there's actually a seed for the levels. So when you generate the seed, you can write down the seed, and then if you want to go play that dungeon again as a different character, you just put the same seed in. It's fantastic. The problems with it, there are some things like the undead can't be hurt by non-magical weapons. If you don't know that, and if you play a character who's not using magical weapons, congratulations, you're not going to be able to defeat these enemies.
Gotcha.
But that's not a 3DO issue. That's just Dungeons and Dragons. And I had the experience I haven't had in literally decades of spending all this time rolling these stats, making the character I wanted, playing for 30 seconds, and watching that character die.
Yeah.
And which is kind of the Dungeons & Dragons thing, which is kind of awesome. I don't know. That sort of brought me back.
If it works for you, then that's great.
Yeah.
Somewhat frustrating, maybe for the mainstream gamer, though.
Yeah. You could save, but there was only one save slot. So it's like, I don't know what this room is going to happen. I'm going to save. And
listen, as a non-Dungeons and Dragon player, I've never ever played anything Dungeons and Dragons unless it was a video game, and at that, only ones that are loosely based on Dungeons and Dragons. So when I played Slayer, I was like, oh, I might be in for a load of hurt here, and I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
I know it's, a product of its time. Mm-hmm. So, like, dungeon crawling, it's very PC, like dungeon crawler. It's still great. Really good stuff. Yeah,
this is one of the few that I played where, I tried to put think about what the game system was like when it came out.
Yeah.
This was one of the only ones where I said, for the time it was out, this was fantastic. All the other stuff was like, well, Super Nintendo was out at the same time and doing way better at any of this. But this is, you know what? Yeah, I would have been very happy to play this on any of the consoles I owned. This was a good game.
Now, we've talked about some good and some promising, but let's talk about a couple that maybe don't have much redeeming at all. We haven't done dishonorable mentions in a while.
Yeah.
But it's time to bring it back.
Oh, yeah.
And the first
Big old
dishonorable
steaming
mention
piles.
is a big steaming pile for sure. Plumbers don't wear ties. Now, this is defined or described at least as, ready for this? An adult-oriented romantic comedy graphic adventure dating sim. Guess what? Guess how many of those terms are actually untrue?
I don't think any of those words mean what you think they mean.
Yeah. It's not adult-oriented because there's actually no adult content in the game.
Nope.
You can see some dude's hairy butt for a second, but you don't even get any boobs. It's not romantic. It's not very funny because it's horribly acted. It's a graphic adventure. Doesn't that imply some kind of puzzle solving or adventuring or graphics? The opening is a full motion video scene, and then from that point on, it's just a slideshow. Every so often, you choose what you choose what you want to do. There's a couple of different endings, but guess what? It doesn't matter. It's all garbage.
Yeah.
Listening to these people talk is like nails on a chalkboard. It is embarrassing. And it's embarrassing, and there's no nudity. I don't like it.
And if you don't believe Bryan, you can find the whole thing on YouTube.
Oh, you can watch the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No nudity.
So if you literally have nothing better to do with your life, and if you don't, then we need to talk because you can do better.
And if you just want porn for your 3DO,
we have you covered.
Definitely available. Thank you, Japan, as always.
Yeah, well, actually, so these weren't released in Japan necessarily, but what happened to the 3DO was if it was popular in any market, it became known for a porn delivery system. There's this wonderful, I want to give credit to the website nerdbacon.com. He actually has a review of the Vivid Interactive. So you go to nerdbacon.com, Vivid Interactive 3DO, and I'm assuming he or maybe she, either way, went through all of the Vivid releases. Now, Vivid Interactive was a traditional porn producer that went into her time. Okay, it's a she. Sorry, I wanted to give her credit. They started out as some games. Yeah, we can't show you the. Actually,
Show over.
I have no control.
I have no control either.
It started out similar to the Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, where the game aspect was just like hitting a button to decide what you're going to do. Yeah. Eventually, they completely even gave up on that and just you put in the 3DO game, and there's 6 scenes. You pick the scene, you watch the porn. It's your 1990s. Everything's fake. Everything's awful. I'm not recommending these at all. It's just this weird little.
It's a footnote.
Offshoot. Yeah. It's kind of Again, there's a lot about the 3DO is like, well, this is where gaming could have gone.
Yeah.
It didn't for many good reasons, but it's just this weird.
I just want VR porn.
It
exists. I just want more of it.
Well,
it's never enough.
So my dishonorable mention is going to be.
Oh no! Don't tell me it's the one at the bottom of the screen.
No, not that one. No, that's.
Whew, I almost had to edit this whole part out.
Yeah, that almost became it, but we'll talk about that next episode.
Oh God, I can't wait.
Virtuoso.
Yeah, so much better. Check this out.
So, yeah, Bryan handed me this. You're looking at this footage here, and it's like, wow, this is gonna be so like cheesily great. It's so 90s, and yeah, this is gonna be. No, it's not so bad. It's good. It's not a hidden gem. It's not like, wow, look at this weird artifact. It's just bad. It's badly made. I
love it.
Yeah, no,
it's horrible. It's like Bubsy 3D horrible. I love it.
I don't even. I guess we'll talk about it. You're this rock star who, to kind of blow off steam, ends up in this virtual world to fight monsters.
Is this like a common theme through like the 90s? Like everything.
Everything was cyberpunk. Everything was VR. This was the first big failure of VR until kind of now. This is why people, old folks like me, are still gun shy about everyone being so excited about VR.
Lawnmower Man. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, he walks around and. Like at first you're like, okay, well at least the music's going to be good. No, No, I think they just kind of walked around the neighborhood and just like, yeah. Oh, those guys. All right, they know
stopped at
2.5
every garage
chords. So okay, you're going to be doing our music.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's first person shooter Doomish. There's kind of like a fog, basically, like because I don't think they can render characters past a certain distance. So you'll be killed or shot by things that aren't even in existence yet.
Yeah.
Moving around is a nightmare. If you get close to any wall surface, your character leans up against it, which gives you your only moment of comedy because you can actually, I mean, you'll see the back of your character. It's like, oh, he must kind of look like a badass. But then you see the front, and he looks like what a musician leading a hair band in the 90s looks like now.
Right. Like totally too old for the part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you said this was a first-person shooter. It moves like a first-person shooter, but it's a third person.
Technically it's a third person, but only because they put a static image of the person you're supposed to be in front of the camera.
Right.
Not because it's actually, an interesting animation of the person running around.
You need this game.
No, you don't.
Yes, you do.
You need self-respect.
This is a must-have if you have a 3DO.
Yeah. I tell you what, you save your money. Just send me whatever you're going to spend on that, and I'll talk to you for like 20 minutes and tell you why you're a better person than this.
And while you're sending him money, send me the black disc of Killing Time.
There's even one level. Oh gosh, was it I can't remember the name of the level. This game stuck with me so much. But basically, it's a maze. Hooray!
Our favorite kind of levels.
It's so hard to navigate and find your way around to get into the maze. You're more than likely to get killed by the enemies outside the maze before you ever actually get in there.
Thank you, Data East.
Yeah,
Thank you.
This makes me sad.
I mean, I hate ending on a low note, but that's what we're doing here. It's a roller coaster ride of experiences when you play the 3DO. I think there are a lot of great titles. There are just as many horrible titles. And the stuff in the middle, I think it's the stuff that's fun to explore. And we're not done exploring yet. No. We have 6 more games we're going to talk about next week.
And I have one that's a legitimately great game with an awesome backstory. So, I know. Exciting.
I can't think of it. So, we're just going to stop right now.
Yep.
And we're going to pick this up again next week. We're actually going to be wearing new different clothes next week. It's crazy. Support us on Patreon.
Oh, sorry.
For Gaming Without Parole, I'm Bryan Paul.
I'm Desra.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.